I'm Ava 31F, and I feel like my world is crumbling around me. I need to get this off my chest or I swear I'll explode. My husband, Ethan 32M, and I have been married for 6 years. We have a beautiful, rambunctious 4-year-old daughter named Chloe. On the surface, our life looks like something straight out of a magazine. Ethan has a killer job at a high-powered law firm, and I'm a stay-at-home mom, which I honestly love. We live in a great neighborhood, have amazing friends. It's all supposed to be perfect. But lately, it feels wrong. Let me give you some background. Ethan and I were those sickeningly sweet college sweethearts. We met in our freshman year English class. I was immediately drawn to his intelligence, his quick wit, and that charming, crooked smile. He was everything I thought I wanted, ambitious, driven, and completely head over heels for me. We were inseparable. After graduation, we moved to the city, got married, bought a house, the whole 9 yards. Ethan climbed the corporate ladder like a freaking spider monkey, and I embraced my role as a mom. Trading in my career aspirations, I had wanted to be a journalist for a life of playdates and PTA meetings. Honestly, I wouldn't trade it for anything. Ethan has always been a loving and supportive partner, a hands-on dad. We've always communicated well, or so I thought, and had a strong bond. But about a month ago, something shifted. I can't quite put my finger on it, but it's like a subtle crack has appeared in our foundation, a tiny fracture that's slowly widening, threatening to bring the whole thing crashing down. It started with a call from my best friend, Olivia 31F. Olivia and I have been inseparable since kindergarten. She's my rock, my confidante, the sister I never had. She also works at Ethan's firm as a paralegal, though she's in a completely different department. She calls me one afternoon, and after the usual pleasantries, she drops this bomb. Hey, do you know a woman named Serena who works with Ethan? Serena? No, I didn't. Olivia proceeds to tell me that Serena, mid-20s. F is a new associate at the firm. She's been working closely with Ethan for the last few months, and Olivia has noticed them together. A lot. I've seen them having lunch together, working late in his office, even grabbing drinks after work, Olivia said, her voice laced with a concern that made my stomach clench. I wouldn't think anything of it, but there's something about the way they interact, Ava. It's intense. I tried to brush it off. Ethan's always been friendly with his colleagues, Liv. It probably doesn't mean anything, but Olivia persisted. It's not just friendly, Ava. It's flirty. I saw them laughing together at the water cooler today, and she touched his arm like a lot. And the way he looks at her. She trailed off, leaving the unspoken words hanging in the air. The way he looks at her, the way he used to look at me. That night, after Chloe was asleep, I casually brought up Serena to Ethan. So, Olivia mentioned you have a new associate, Serena. How's she working out? I asked, trying to keep my voice light and nonchalant. He looked up from his laptop, a flicker of something. Surprise? Guilt? Crossing his face before it vanished. Oh yeah, Serena. She's great. Really sharp? She's been a huge help on the Miller case. The Miller case. That was the big, high-profile case he'd been working on for months. The one that had him pulling all-nighters and sacrificing weekends. It was also the case he barely talked about with me anymore. Olivia said she's seen you two together a lot, I continued, my heart pounding in my chest. Grabbing lunch, drinks after work, he chuckled, a forced, unnatural sound. Yeah, well, the Miller case is all-consuming. We've been putting in crazy hours. Serena's been invaluable. We grab lunch to brainstorm. And sometimes we need to unwind after a long day, you know? His explanation sounded plausible. But the way he said it, it felt rehearsed, like he was reading from a script. I just want to make sure you're not overworking yourself, Ethan, I said, reaching for his hand. Remember to take care of yourself. He squeezed my hand, his eyes meeting mine. I'm fine, Ava. Don't worry. You and Chloe are my priority. But something felt off. The spark that had once burned so brightly between us seemed to have dimmed. I felt a distance growing, a chasm widening. Over the next few days, Olivia kept me updated. More lunches, more late nights, more lingering glances. The more she told me, the more my anxiety spiraled. I started noticing changes in Ethan. He was working even later, coming home exhausted and distant. He was less attentive, less affectionate. Our conversations felt superficial, like we were just going through the motions. He wasn't intimate with me anymore. I found myself checking his phone when he was in the shower, scrolling through his call logs and text messages, looking for any evidence, any clue. But I found nothing. He was too careful. One evening, Ethan came home with a small bouquet of flowers. Lilies, my favorite. He handed them to me with a kiss on the cheek, saying, "Just wanted to show you I'm thinking of you." I smiled, accepting the flowers, but a cold dread settled in my stomach. It felt like damage control, like he was trying to overcompensate for something. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the scent of lilies filling the room, a constant reminder of my growing unease. I was torn between trusting my husband and listening to my gut, which was screaming at me that something was terribly wrong. Was I being paranoid? Was Olivia reading too much into things? Or was Ethan hiding something from me? I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, one wrong step away from falling into the abyss. A lot of you thought I was being paranoid, and honestly, part of me wanted to believe that. I wanted to believe that I was just overreacting, that Ethan was still the man I married, that our marriage was as strong as I always thought it was. But then, something happened that solidified my fears. A few days after my first post, Ethan casually mentioned that he had an upcoming business trip. "It's a conference in Chicago," he said, scrolling through his phone. "The whole team is going. It'll be good for networking and professional development." Chicago. A conference. The whole team, including Serena. My heart sank. Ethan rarely travels for work. This was unusual. My suspicions flared up again, stronger than ever. "When is it?" I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. "Next weekend," he replied. "It's just for a couple of days. A couple of days in Chicago with Serena. Alone." I managed a weak smile. "Sounds like fun." "Be careful." He glanced up, a strange look in his eyes. "I will. Don't worry about me. Just take care of Chloe." That night, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. This trip felt off. I knew I couldn't just sit at home, twiddling my thumbs, wondering what was going on. I needed to know the truth. So I made a decision. A reckless, potentially disastrous decision. I decided to follow him. I know, it sounds crazy, but I was desperate. I needed answers. I couldn't bear the thought of him betraying our family. The next Friday morning, I dropped Chloe off at my mom's house, telling her I had a girls' weekend planned. Then, I rented a car and staked out Ethan's office. He left around noon, heading towards the airport. I kept a safe distance, my heart pounding in my chest, praying he wouldn't spot me. The flight to Chicago was agonizing. Every bump, every delay, felt like a sign that I was making a mistake. Maybe I was wrong about Ethan. Maybe I was just letting my insecurities consume me. But then I remembered Olivia's words, the way Ethan looked at Serena, the subtle changes in his behavior. I pushed the doubt aside and focused on the task at hand. When we landed in Chicago, I followed Ethan to his hotel. It was a swanky downtown hotel, the kind he would never normally choose for a business trip. He checked in, and I waited in the lobby, trying to blend in, feeling like a character in a bad spy movie. About an hour later, I saw her. Serena walked into the lobby, her eyes scanning the room. She was even more beautiful in person, radiating confidence and an undeniable allure. She was carrying a small overnight bag, her expression eager and excited. She spotted Ethan and a bright smile lit up her face. They exchanged a few words, their voices too low for me to hear, and then they headed towards the elevators. My blood ran cold. I followed them, keeping a safe distance, my hands shaking, my mind reeling. They got off on the same floor, and I watched as they walked down the hallway, stopping in front of a room. Ethan swiped his key card. The door clicked open, and they both disappeared inside. My world tilted on its axis. I stood there, frozen, for what felt like an eternity. The reality of the situation slammed into me with the force of a freight train. My husband was cheating on me. With Serena, in a hotel room in Chicago. I felt sick, betrayed, and utterly humiliated. I didn't know what to do. Should I confront them? Should I call the police? Should I just run away and never look back? I finally decided to get a room on the same floor, a few doors down from theirs. I needed to gather my thoughts, to figure out my next move. I spent the rest of the day pacing my room, consumed by anger and despair. I imagined Ethan and Serena together, laughing, touching, sharing secrets. The images were like daggers to my heart. As darkness fell, I heard voices in the hallway. Ethan and Serena emerged from their room, dressed to the nines. They were clearly going out for dinner. I watched them walk towards the elevators, their bodies close, their laughter echoing in the hallway. They looked like a couple, a happy couple, completely oblivious to the devastation they were causing. I couldn't take it anymore. I needed to do something. I needed to confront them, to expose their lies, to make them pay for what they were doing. But I also knew that I needed to be smart, to gather evidence, to protect myself and Chloe. I'm sitting here now, in my hotel room, the city lights twinkling outside my window, feeling utterly lost and heartbroken. I don't even know where to begin. This is worse than I ever imagined. After seeing Ethan and Serena leave for dinner, I was a mess. I cried. I screamed into a pillow. I even considered packing my bags and running away. But I knew I couldn't. I had to face this. I decided to wait for them to return to the hotel. I wanted to see how they acted, to hear what they said. I needed to know the extent of their betrayal. It was late when they finally came back. I heard their voices in the hallway, their laughter light and carefree. They sounded like they had a wonderful evening. As they reached their room, Serena giggled and said, "That was the best steak I've ever had, Ethan. You really know how to spoil a girl." Ethan chuckled. "Only the best for you, Serena." Then I heard the unmistakable sound of a kiss. I wanted to scream, to burst out of my room and confront them. But I held back. I needed to stay strong. They went inside their room, and I could hear muffled voices, laughter, and other sounds that I won't go into detail about. It was clear that they were together, intimate, and completely unconcerned about the pain they were causing me. I spent the rest of the night tossing and turning in my bed, unable to sleep, haunted by the sounds of their betrayal. The next morning, Ethan and Serena left the hotel early. I followed them, my heart pounding in my chest, unsure of what to expect. They got into separate cars and drove in different directions. I decided to follow Ethan. He drove for about an hour, heading away from the city and into the suburbs. I started to get nervous. Where was he going? Was he meeting another woman? He eventually pulled into a quiet residential neighborhood and parked in front of a small, unassuming house. My stomach dropped. This wasn't a business meeting. This was something else entirely. Ethan got out of the car and walked towards the house. He looked relaxed, confident, like he belonged there. Then, the door opened. A woman appeared, holding a small child in her arms. The woman was beautiful, with long brown hair and a warm smile. The child was a little boy, maybe 3 or 4 years old, with bright, curious eyes. The little boy saw Ethan and squealed with delight. "Daddy! Daddy!" he cried, reaching out for him. Ethan's face lit up. He took the little boy in his arms and kissed him on the cheek. Then he turned to the woman and kissed her, a deep, passionate kiss that left no doubt about their relationship. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. Ethan had a child with another woman. He had been living a double life, not just with Serena, but with this woman and their child. I watched as Ethan went inside the house, the woman and the little boy following him. They looked like a family, a happy, loving family. My entire world shattered. I sat there in my car, unable to move, unable to think. I was numb, paralyzed by the sheer magnitude of his betrayal. How could he do this? How could he lie to me for so long? How could he have a child with another woman while we were married? I eventually managed to start my car and drive away. I needed to get out of there, to escape the horrifying reality of what I had just witnessed. I drove back to the hotel, packed my bags, and checked out. I didn't even bother leaving a note for Ethan. I just left. I'm back home now, at my parents' house, with Chloe. I haven't told Ethan that I know about everything. I don't even know if I ever will. I'm completely broken. My heart is shattered. My trust is gone. The support I've received here has been, honestly, it's been a lifeline. Knowing I'm not alone in this nightmare has given me the strength to keep going. After discovering Ethan's double life, I was numb. I spent the next few days in a daze, barely able to function. My parents were incredibly supportive, taking care of Chloe and letting me cry it out. But I knew I couldn't stay in that state forever. I had to face reality, to make a plan, to protect myself and Chloe. I decided to hire a private investigator. I needed to know everything about Ethan's other life, the woman, the child, their finances, everything. I needed to gather as much evidence as possible before confronting him. The PI got to work immediately. Within a few days, he had uncovered a wealth of information. The woman's name was Amelia. She was a teacher, and she had been dating Ethan for several years, even before we got married. Apparently, Ethan had told her that he was separated from his wife, that he was planning to divorce me. The child's name was Leo. He was 4 years old, and he was the spitting image of Ethan. The PI had obtained photos of Ethan, Amelia, and Leo together, looking like a perfect family. The PI also uncovered evidence that Ethan had been financially supporting Amelia and Leo for years, using a secret bank account that I knew nothing about. He had been siphoning money from our joint account and funneling it to them. I was furious. Not only had he been cheating on me, but he had also been stealing from me. I knew it was time to confront him. I called Ethan and told him that I needed to talk. I didn't tell him what I knew, but I made it clear that it was important. He arrived at my parents' house that evening, looking nervous and contrite. I led him into the living room and closed the door. "We need to talk, Ethan," I said, my voice trembling. He nodded, avoiding my gaze. "I know. I'm sorry, Ava. I've been meaning to tell you." "Tell me what, Ethan?" I interrupted, my voice rising. "Tell me that you've been cheating on me for years? Tell me that you have a child with another woman? Tell me that you've been stealing from me?" His face paled. He opened his mouth to speak, but I cut him off. "Don't even try to deny it, Ethan," I said, pulling out the photos of him, Amelia, and Leo. "I know everything." He stared at the photos, his eyes filled with shame. "Ava, I can explain." "There's nothing to explain, Ethan," I said, my voice cold. "You've destroyed our marriage, our family. You've betrayed me in the worst possible way." I told him that I had hired a private investigator and that I knew about Amelia, Leo, and the secret bank account. I showed him the evidence, the bank statements, the photos, everything. He didn't say a word. He just stood there, his head hanging low, his body trembling. "I want a divorce, Ethan," I said, my voice firm. "And I want full custody of Chloe." He looked up, his eyes filled with tears. "Ava, please don't do this. I love you. I love Chloe. I can change." "It's too late, Ethan," I said. "You had your chance. You made your choice. Now, you have to live with the consequences." I told him to leave and never contact me again. I said that I would be in touch through my lawyer. He left without a word, his shoulders slumped, his face etched with despair. I stood there in the living room, alone, feeling a strange mix of relief and sadness. It was over. The lies, the deceit, the betrayal, it was all over. But I also knew that the road ahead would be long and difficult. I had to navigate a divorce, fight for custody of Chloe, and rebuild my life from scratch. But I was determined to do it. I was strong. I was resilient. And I had the support of my family and friends. I was ready to face the future. Whatever it may hold, the past few weeks have been a blur of legal paperwork, therapy sessions, and sleepless nights. But I'm starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. The divorce is proceeding smoothly. Ethan hasn't contested anything. He knows he's in the wrong, and he doesn't want to make things any more difficult than they already are. I'm seeking sole custody of Chloe, and the lawyer said it will be granted. I also plan to sue Ethan for financial compensation. As for Ethan, I haven't heard from him directly, but I know that he was fired from his job at the law firm. His reputation is ruined. He can't get away from what he did, and the shame is always going to linger. Amelia left him when she found out about Serena. Apparently, he had been stringing her along for years, promising to leave me but never actually doing it. She's now filing for child support. Serena was fired as well. She's in a deep mess for using her influence to blackmail Ethan. I'm not sure what the future holds for them, but I know that they're both paying the price for their actions. As for me, I'm focusing on healing and rebuilding my life. I've started a new job as a freelance writer, which allows me to work from home and spend more time with Chloe. I'm also in therapy, working through my anger, sadness, and betrayal. It's a slow process, but I'm making progress. Chloe is doing well, considering everything that's happened. She misses her father, but she's resilient. She's young enough to understand that Ethan did something wrong. She's been asking a lot of questions about where he is and why he doesn't visit. It's been challenging answering them. My parents have been my rock, providing emotional support and helping me with childcare. I don't know what I would do without them. Olivia has also been amazing, checking in on me regularly and offering a listening ear. I'm not sure if I'll ever be able to fully trust anyone again, but I'm open to the possibility of finding love in the future. For now, my priority is Chloe. I want to create a happy and stable life for her, free from lies and betrayal. I've learned a lot from this experience. I've learned that people are capable of great cruelty and deception, but I've also learned that I'm stronger than I ever thought possible. I'm not a victim. I'm a survivor, and I'm ready to move on. It's been almost a year since I last updated, and honestly, I've been avoiding revisiting this whole ordeal. I needed time to heal, to move forward, to build a new life for Chloe and myself. For a while, I thought I was doing okay. The divorce was finalized. I had a steady job. Chloe was thriving in preschool, and I was even starting to feel like myself again. The scars were still there, of course, but they were fading. Then, a few weeks ago, I got a letter. It was a plain white envelope with no return address. My name and address were typed, not handwritten. My gut clenched as I picked it up, a sense of unease washing over me. Inside, there was a single sheet of paper. The message was short, and it was typed. It read, "You think you know the truth, Ava? You have no idea." Below that, a single word, Leo. My blood ran cold. Leo. Ethan's son with Amelia. What did this mean? What was I missing? I tried to dismiss it as a prank, a cruel joke from someone who knew about my past. But something about the letter felt different. It felt like a warning. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story. Something I had overlooked, something Ethan had kept hidden. I decided to contact my private investigator again. He had been so thorough the first time. I figured he was my best bet for uncovering the truth. I told him about the letter and asked him to dig deeper into Ethan's past, to look for anything that might explain the message. He agreed, and within a few days he had some shocking news. "Ava, I think you need to sit down," he said over the phone, his voice grave. "I've uncovered something disturbing about Ethan and Amelia." He told me that Amelia wasn't just a teacher, as I had previously believed. She was also a con artist. Apparently, Amelia had a long history of manipulating men, seducing them, and then draining their finances. She had been arrested several times for fraud and theft, but she had always managed to avoid conviction. I believe that Ethan was one of her victims, the pie said. She targeted him, seduced him, and then convinced him to support her and Leo. She likely fabricated the story about being a single mother struggling to make ends meet. I was stunned. I had always believed that Ethan was the villain in this story, the one who had betrayed me and lied to me. But what if he was also a victim? The pie continued. I also discovered that Leo isn't Ethan's biological son. My jaw dropped. According to Amelia's medical records, she underwent fertility treatment several years ago using an anonymous sperm donor. Leo is the result of that treatment. So, Ethan wasn't just supporting another woman and her child. He was supporting a woman who had manipulated him and a child who wasn't even his. I felt a surge of anger towards Amelia. She had not only destroyed my marriage, but also manipulated Ethan into believing a lie. But I also felt a pang of sympathy for Ethan. He had been used and betrayed, just like me. The pie told me that he had evidence to prove everything he was saying, including Amelia's criminal record, her medical records, and bank statements showing her fraudulent activities. I thanked him for his work and hung up the phone, my mind reeling. Everything I thought I knew about Ethan, Amelia, and Leo had been turned upside down. I decided to confront Ethan. I needed to hear his side of the story, to see if he knew the truth about Amelia and Leo. I called him and asked him to meet me at a neutral location. He hesitated but eventually agreed. We met at a coffee shop near my house. He looked tired and worn, his eyes filled with sadness. "What do you want, Ava?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. I took a deep breath and told him what I had learned from the private investigator. I told him about Amelia's criminal past, her manipulation, and the fact that Leo wasn't his biological son. As I spoke, his face went through a range of emotions: shock, disbelief, anger, and finally, despair. When I finished, he sat there in silence for a long time. Then, he looked up at me, his eyes filled with tears. "I had no idea, Ava," he said, his voice breaking. "I swear I had no idea. He told me that he had believed Amelia's lies, that he had thought he was helping a single mother and her child. He said that he had loved Leo like his own son, and that the thought of him not being his biological child was devastating. He admitted that Amelia had manipulated him, that she had played on his guilt and his desire to do the right thing. He said that he had been blinded by her beauty and her charm, and that he had never suspected her true nature. He apologized for everything he had done, for the lies, the betrayal, the pain he had caused me. He said that he understood why I had divorced him, and that he didn't blame me for hating him. "I was a fool, Ava," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "I let myself be used by her, and I hurt you in the process. I'm so sorry." I sat there listening to him, my heart aching. I could see the genuine remorse in his eyes. I could feel his pain. I realized that Ethan wasn't just a villain in this story. He was also a victim, a pawn in Amelia's twisted game. I didn't forgive him completely. The wounds were still too fresh, the scars too deep, but I did start to see him in a new light, as a flawed human being who had made a terrible mistake. As we sat there, talking, I realized that the letter I had received was likely from someone who knew the truth about Amelia and wanted to expose her. Perhaps it was one of her previous victims, or someone who had been wronged by her in the past. I knew that I had to do something to stop her from hurting anyone else. I decided to contact the authorities and provide them with the evidence I had gathered. I hoped that they would be able to build a case against Amelia and bring her to justice. Working with the authorities wasn't easy. Amelia was clever, and she'd covered her tracks well. But with the evidence my pie had gathered, along with Ethan's eventual cooperation, he was hesitant at first, ashamed, but he ultimately wanted to see her brought to justice. The police were able to build a solid case. It turned out that Amelia had been running her con for years, moving from town to town, preying on vulnerable men. She had racked up a string of victims, each one believing her sob stories and handing over their money, their time, and their hearts. The trial was a media circus. Amelia, of course, pleaded innocent, painting herself as a victim of a vengeful ex-wife and a scorned lover. But the evidence was overwhelming. The testimonies of her previous victims were heartbreaking. The bank statements, the medical records, the PI's meticulous investigation, it all pointed to one conclusion. Amelia was a master manipulator, a cold-hearted con artist who preyed on the vulnerable. In the end, she was found guilty on multiple counts of fraud, theft, and identity theft. She was sentenced to a lengthy prison term, a fitting punishment for the years of pain and suffering she had inflicted on so many people. Watching her being led away in handcuffs, I felt a sense of closure. Justice had been served. Amelia was finally being held accountable for her actions. As for Ethan, he testified against Amelia, telling the court everything he knew about her schemes. He was contrite, ashamed, and genuinely remorseful. He also finally took a DNA test to prove for certain that he was not Leo's biological father, which came back negative. After the trial, Ethan reached out to me. He wanted to apologize again, to explain himself further. I agreed to meet him, but I made it clear that I wasn't interested in rekindling our relationship. We met at a park near my house. It was a sunny afternoon, and the park was filled with children playing and families enjoying the weather. Chloe was at a playdate. Ethan looked different. He was thinner, his eyes were clear, and his demeanor was humble. He seemed like a shadow of the man he used to be. He told me that he had started therapy, and that he was working hard to understand why he had been so vulnerable to Amelia's manipulation. He said that he had realized he had been trying to fill a void in his life, a void that only I could fill. He apologized again for the lies, the betrayal, and the pain he had caused me. He said that he understood why I couldn't forgive him, but he hoped that one day we could be friends. I listened to him, my heart aching. I could see that he was genuinely sorry, that he had learned from his mistakes. I told him that I couldn't forgive him completely, but I was willing to try to move forward, to put the past behind us. I said that I wanted to create a civil co-parenting relationship for Chloe's sake. He smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. "Thank you, Ava," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "That means more to me than you know." We talked for a while longer about Chloe, about our lives, about the future. It was a difficult conversation, but it was also cathartic. When we parted ways, I felt a sense of peace. I had finally confronted my past, and I was ready to move on. The truth about Amelia had changed everything. It had exposed Ethan's vulnerability, his naivete, and his own victimization. It had made me question everything I thought I knew about him, about myself, and about our relationship. But it had also given me a new perspective, a new understanding of the complexities of human nature. I realized that people are capable of great cruelty and deception, but they are also capable of great kindness and compassion. I had seen both sides of that equation in the past year. I'm still healing, still learning, still growing, but I'm optimistic about the future. I have a beautiful daughter, a supportive family, and a fulfilling career. I am ready to continue this journey alone. I don't know what the future holds, but I'm open to the possibility of finding love again. For now, I'm focusing on myself, on Chloe, and on building a life that is filled with joy, happiness, and authenticity. Thank you all for being a part of my journey. Your support has been invaluable. I hope that my story has helped you in some way, that it has given you hope, strength, or simply a sense of connection. Remember, you are not alone. Whatever challenges you are facing, you are not alone. There is always light at the end of the tunnel, and with that, I think I'm finally ready to close this chapter of my life. I wish you all the best. 5 years have passed since the trial, since Amelia was imprisoned, since Ethan and I started tentatively rebuilding a co-parenting relationship. Life, as it always does, has continued to evolve. Chloe is now 9, a bright, articulate, and compassionate young lady. She understands more than I ever thought possible about what happened, but we've always been honest with her, age appropriately, about the complexities of relationships and the importance of truth. Ethan has become a surprisingly dedicated father. He's remarried to a kind woman named Sarah, who is wonderful with Chloe. They even have a little boy together, Liam, who Chloe adores. It's oddly harmonious. I never would have predicted it. Ethan and I aren't exactly friends, but we're respectful, communicative, and focused on Chloe's well-being above all else. And me? I'm happy. Truly happy. I'm still working as a freelance writer, and my career is thriving. A few years ago, I met someone. His name is David. He's a kind, gentle, and incredibly supportive man. He's also a single dad with a daughter, Emily, who is a year younger than Chloe. David understands the challenges and rewards of single parenthood, and he's been an incredible partner. David and I are now engaged. We're planning a small wedding next summer, and Chloe and Emily are both thrilled to be flower girls. Sometimes I look back on that dark period of my life, the months filled with suspicion, betrayal, and heartbreak, and it feels like a distant nightmare. It's hard to believe that I was ever so lost, so consumed by anger and despair. I've learned so much since then. I've learned the importance of trusting my intuition, of standing up for myself, and of never settling for less than I deserve. I've also learned that forgiveness is possible, even in the face of unimaginable pain. I've forgiven Ethan, not completely, but enough to move forward and create a healthy co-parenting relationship for Chloe. And I've even managed to feel a flicker of sympathy for Amelia, a deeply broken woman who was consumed by her own demons. I've come to realize that life is messy, unpredictable, and often unfair, but it's also beautiful, full of joy, and brimming with possibilities. I've chosen to focus on the beauty, to embrace the joy, and to seize the possibilities. I've built a new life for myself, a life that is filled with love, laughter, and authentic connections. And sometimes when I'm holding David's hand, watching Chloe and Emily play together, or sharing a quiet moment with Ethan and Sarah at a school event, I can't help but smile. I survived. I thrived. And I found happiness again, even after the darkest of storms. This isn't just the end of a story, it's a testament to resilience, a celebration of hope, and a reminder that even after the deepest betrayals, love, joy, and a new beginning are always possible. Thanks for listening. Really?